This is the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific podcast. My name is Letitia Shelton, and I want to thank you again for tuning in today as I interview another very special guest. But before I do, I want to talk about some exciting news. Just in the last week, our brand new book, Sex, Dating and Relationships and Everything in Between, has come off the printer. This is a project I've been working with for the past year with about 25 local Fijians, and we want to bring out of the shadows and into the light a lot of those topics that we don't always talk about in our families or churches. And so this year, in order to be able to print thousands of copies, I'm going to be cycling my bike across the United States of America, 6,000 kilometers. And I'm hoping people will sponsor me so we can raise thousands of dollars so we can get this into the hands of young people all across Fiji. Such an important resource. So stay tuned for more information about that. Today, we are continuing on with the theme of the impact of childhood sexual abuse. After I released my interview with Rosie, I had many people write to me, men and women, just to share their own stories. And one woman is with me today. Her name is Talei Williams. Hello, Talei. So good that you'd come with us today. And again, like hundreds and thousands of Fijians growing up, you have been a victim of childhood sexual abuse. And this is not anything that's small that should be taken lightly. And I know we're speaking up. This platform exists to give people a voice, and we want to make it normal to speak up about abuse rather than it being hidden under the shadows. So that's what you're doing today, Talei, another story. And every story matters.
Yep.
Every story is different, how people process, how they come.
100%.
Before we jump into your story, just give us a bit of a background of who you are, what you do, where you live, if you want to.
Awesome. Yeah, sure. My name is Talei Williams, and I'm from Savo, Asu Taveuni. I was born and raised in Savo. I currently live in Suva. I am employed at Spinning Village. We're at events and a media company. I'm so blessed to be with the team who's run by a power couple, Tix and Mary, who's just been such a beautiful light and guide in my recent journey. And yeah, I have two beautiful children. My son Akbu, he's 7, and my daughter Ellie, she is 4, turning 5.
Wow, that's amazing. Well done. Well,
Yeah.
maybe just tell us, let's dive straight into it. Where did your story of
So,
abuse begin?
it actually began in paradise.
Hmm.
Paradise in the sense that it was home, this place. I've always had this thing where I've called people home, but there was this one place in particular I thought I'd call it home because I remember my mom before she passed away that I remember uh, small memories of her and I being at this particular place. I will not name because I have very close relations with the family that still lives there. And my dad, I actually have a picture of us in a family house there that I call home. So home for me wasn't just people, it was the place. It was my paradise. The abuse started there from a man who I thought I could call or lean on to as grandfather. Yeah.
Okay. And at what age were you when this man began to do things to you?
Mm. It was very subtle at first. They would come about as mm, jokes. They would come in various ways, and I thought at the time that because I was growing up, I was very naive, immature. I wasn't able to pick it up. But as I grew older, I started to see it. It was something that I now teach my children to never accept from someone that is not your mom or your dad. And yeah, and I think being a child of working parents at the time, it was my dad who was away for long. We were mostly left in the care of the village. as like we like to say. We were mostly left in the hands of the villagers, and as much as it was good, all of them were good except this one person. Hmm.
This one, again, it's a man that you knew and trusted.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
completely.
can you describe some of the things, especially some of the subtle things? Because I think this is important for parents to understand and to be looking out for. How, I guess it's what we'd call grooming. So what were some of the signs of him grooming you?
Sitting on the lap. I think now looking back, that would be a no-go. Sitting on the lap, forcing a kiss. Usually in the Itoki language, would say, "Lakamanda mai rengumanda," and then if we hold back, and they'll say, "Oh, don't! I'm older than you. Like, you need to kiss me, or we need to exchange kisses or hugs or something of some sort." And at the time when we were growing up, it was almost like an act of respect. But now with my children, it's a no-go. They are comfortable with the people that they're comfortable with and exchange kisses with those that they trust. If you say kissing mother auntie or kissing mother grandfather, they won't do it if they don't know you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it came very suddenly like that. Grooming me by sitting on his lap, uh, having access to my back, holding over my neck when I was younger. Of course, he was much bigger than I was, and so his hands would naturally sit on the back of my neck, and things like that. If I thought about it, like back then, that would definitely be signs of him grooming me or making me channeling my mentality to be ready to accept things that he may have had planned. Mm.
And what were, as this went along, what did it lead to eventually?
It led to brokenness. It led to pain that I had carried around for years. It had led to an identity crisis that I had gone through briefly. I still struggle with it today, but it took away, it stole a part of me that I didn't know could be stolen.
So his actions that's kind of the fruit of abuse, his actions that went from sitting you on the lap to kissing, did it lead to further abuse?
Yes, it did. Eventually, it had led up to a straight meet me in the back. He wasn't hiding it anymore because I think he had thought that he had, started planting the seeds in there that I would be curious. And my dad had talked to me about my tumble body parts as a very young woman. I lost my mom of cancer when I was a very little girl. I was only in class 3, I was 8. And my dad didn't know when was the right time to talk to me about certain things, and though he just gave it to me every single day, boom, 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 boom. Whenever he had the chance to, he talked to me about grown-up stuff, and I had no idea what he was talking about. But eventually, I kind of knew. But yeah, the abuse that had happened was very physical. There was a lot of grabbing. I am so thankful that rape didn't happen. That I will always thank God for. But he definitely broke my innocence in the fact that I shouldn't have felt what I felt when I was in Fault 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Did your father ever suspect anything with this man?
No, I never told my dad.
Okay. And I mean, were you ever able to communicate with him that you felt uncomfortable, or you just were in a bit of a state of confusion because you trusted him, but then he was doing this?
I had expressed that I was no longer comfortable at my paradise, and that wherever he was gonna go for work, just take me with you. So we went all over the place. We went to Taviuni, we went to Vonu, we went to Lombasa, we went everywhere he went. I went with him. But by the time the trust that I had for my dad was broken because of this man.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned to me that, yeah, just because of this incident, these years with this man preying on you, that you felt like you could never trust men.
Mm, yes, because this person was someone that I trusted so much, so very very much. Once the betrayal happened, and once I felt the way I felt, I had experienced new emotions. I was experiencing a part of me that I had no control over. I didn't have the knowledge for it. So what had happened was there was a part of my brain and in my heart that categorized all my trusted men as people I couldn't trust anymore, and that including my father and my brothers.
Yeah. You said it also broke your interaction with your siblings. How
Oh,
did that happen?
yes, it completely did. For years, I wasn't able to talk to my brothers. And everything that they did, I couldn't be in the house alone with them. If they were with me, I would find an excuse to go out of fear that something like that could happen. Um, and my siblings, because after I had told my sister about it, it had caused a big division in the home. And I couldn't bring it up. He was a respectable man. He was a priest. He was this and he was that, and so I couldn't really find I couldn't really find the trust to trust a different face. I just trusted men, the the people that I know. I know I can't deal with you. It was so much easier for me to trust a complete stranger because at least I knew he wasn't going to betray my trust.
Yeah. Isn't that?
Hmm.
It's all the wrong way around, isn't it?
It's all messed up. It's flipped. My whole world flipped. Yeah.
So often we're told not to speak to strangers or trust them. Um,
Mm.
this does throw. I remember being in a conference in Fiji last year where they said we don't talk about stranger danger because the number one abuser is someone
Yeah.
who's known to our Fijian children,
Mm.
unfortunately. Yeah, wow. And so, but you did speak up to your family and tell them what this man had done, but because he
Yeah.
was prominent and a
Yeah.
priest, nothing was done, hey?
No, nothing was done, and it had led to physical altercation between the two families. And I'm very sad that this had happened. But I watched it all happen. I watched the two families collapse in front of me. And for years, I carried the burden of thinking that it was my fault.
So after yeah, that's really messed up as well,
Yes.
isn't it? That the victim, did the
Mhm.
perpetrator, did this so-called grandfather, once you'd told, once it was out in the open, did he respond differently towards you? Or you did?
Well, to a certain extent, I ran away from home.
Yeah.
So I had gone. I remember living with a family that lived in the heart of Savu Savu. So my dad kind of packed my other sibling and I, and we just moved to a completely new area. We were so used to the life by the sea, and then we would then move to the town, and I didn't like it. But that was my new norm because of what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So another side effect, I mean, you talked about the mental health issues, the loss of self-worth, the mistrust of men. You'd also shared with me how you turned to women.
Hmm.
Was that because, yeah, you didn't trust men?
I didn't. I didn't trust men at all. And uh, as much as I was growing up, I was getting exposed to the world of girlfriend and boyfriend, and I started dating from a very young age. But finding comfort in women was something that I was doing, emotional comfort, and someone that I could just be around without them towering over me and being this big human being that could do something like that to me. So having a peer-to-peer relationship was something that I had sorted, that I had found comfort in.
Was this just female friendships, or was it romantic relationships?
Female friendships, and there were parts of me that were developing feelings for the peers that I had surrounded myself around. I know that in the Bible, and I do respect um, the teachings that were taught, and I never really pursued the relationships. At the time, had I been very rebellious, I think I would have, but God has been very merciful, and the Holy Spirit has always been there, just just like pinning me down, like don't do it, you're gonna regret it. Da, da, da. And I took it all as friendship, and yeah,
Yeah. But
and
again,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, like friendships in my head, they were more, but I would have never communicated that it was more to the other person. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
again, just for having worked with teenage girls for 25 years, I've seen so many who have been abused by men turn to women, whether it's just friendships or the romantic relationships. Again, I think it's a lot of what we're trying to do is look behind the fruit. We look at these issues that we might think are sinful, lesbianism, but there's always a story behind that's led us down
Yeah.
the path
Yep,
where
definitely.
it's usually a young person that needs healing or hope. We talked to Pastor Apanisa a few weeks ago, his story of turning
Yes.
male relationships because of his abuse.
Yes.
So
Yep.
there's always a reason why we act out in a certain way, and being able to ask our children questions of to help heal them and bring them through. Let me just see here. So what has been the main impetus in your healing journey? What's really helped you being able to find healing in your life?
Because I wasn't able to talk to anyone about it, um, I had, honestly speaking, I had sought God. In the hardest times, I would just sit down and I would talk. I would talk to God um, endlessly, like for hours on end. And even though I didn't hear back from him, it would have been nice if he, like, if the heavens just opened and he spoke up and be like, hey, you know what, Talei, da 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 da. It wasn't really that kind of relationship. It felt good because I felt like someone was listening and wasn't telling me what to do. Everyone else that I had talked to about this issue had not only had an opinion, but wanted to direct my life. But they weren't really listening to the hurt. They weren't really paying attention to the hurt that I was carrying. Instead, they wanted to attack the perpetrator. But I'm telling them I need help. I'm not good up here. Like it's in here now. It's in here. But yeah, just that being able to just sit and surround myself with strangers who are now my good pastors, Pastor Ben and Pastor Libby. That's helped a lot. And Pastor Libby's parents, who had planted a church in Savo called C3 Savo, Pastor Clark and Auntie Nate, they were great people that I had spoke to these things about and was of good guide. Mm.
That's fantastic, having people you can talk around. So do you feel like you have overcome, that you're winning the battle?
Oh yes, definitely. Usually before when I talk about this, I would come from a place of pain. I would come from a place of sorrow, of a lost battle. But now I'm able to talk about it with a smile on my face because I felt the pain completely. I had sought God and I was like, you really need to heal this part of me because I don't know what to do with it. I have the Bible, I have counselors, I've sought help from um, institutions and whatnot, but it's just now, looking back to almost 15 years ago, it's so nice to finally tell the story and smile, because that's how I know I'm healing and I'm healed. Mm-mm.
Wow, that's just beautiful. How has speaking out, how has sharing your story helped you heal?
Oh, I think when you tell about it, I think when you share the story, you're not giving yourself away, you are bringing yourself back, because the words that you speak eventually are planted into someone, and then it begins to grow. And then when you're telling your story, you realize how strong you are. When you're telling your story, you realize how far you've come. When you're telling your story, you realize how much healing you've had. And even though you haven't talked about it much, and even though you haven't started much of counseling, and if the only person that you were able to talk to were complete strangers or God, even, that the more you accept that it's happened, and that you forgive yourself and that you forgive them, it helps. It really does help, because for the biggest part of it all, um, I had forgiven him, but I was hard on myself because I allowed it to happen. Yeah. No.
Which is a huge lie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge lie. Definitely, it's a big one. But yeah, I am completely grateful that I am able to look at myself and tell myself that I did nothing wrong, and that this person was an adult and knew what they were doing, and they took advantage of me. And having been able to look back, and if I had to go back to tell my younger self, I'd tell her that it's gonna be okay, that I made it through.
You
Yeah.
made it through. And I think the fact that you've found healing at such a young age, because many carry it for years and years and years, but the fact that you've been able to identify, speak up at a young age is huge. Lastly, before we end, what do you think needs to change in Fijian culture in order to break through this? 4 out of 5 children are abused. How do we change that as a nation?
Yeah, yep, definitely. As much as the village mentality is brilliant and it works in many ways, I think it can be damaging because of a rotten apple, and because of that one person. Having a village raise a child has now become something that not a lot of people are resorting to doing. If I had my child and if I was alone, I would be devastated because of the mental burden that had come with it. And so having other people around me actually helped. Um, but yeah, I think in the Fijian culture, we really need to stop with the keeping it on the down low. And I might get a lot of hate for this, but doing sorrow. Stop with the sorrow. If the abuser is alive, you need to speak up. You need to tell them that this is not okay. You need to announce that they have hit you and that it's not okay, regardless of the kind of relationship that you have. The sorrow mentality or the asking for forgiveness mentality from one family to the other needs to be abandoned in Fiji. You can do it, but still pursue the court case afterwards or something towards the end. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Give me a minute.
Well, yes, you can say sorry, but send him to the police.
Yes.
Report it.
Yes.
Has to be reported. Yeah, wow, thank you, Talei. Such words of wisdom and hope
Thank you.
that you've offered today to those again. And it does seem like there's a new younger generation with you and Rosie and other people who've been on this podcast who have just had enough of the silence. You're not prepared for your children to go through what you've been through. And so I love that there's this that's rising up across Fiji that's saying enough is enough. So thank you for being part of that voice and continue to
so
the story. It's one of your beautiful children. They're just waking up.
Just waking up.
Yeah. Wish you all the best for your future and all that God has for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. I appreciate this a lot.
God bless.
Naka.